how do you define the successful song at the end? Is it just the volume of the applause, or can you sense something happening while you're singing it?
I think both. For me, the successful song is a song that works. That for me is the word I use. Does it work or doesn't it? And when I say does it work, what I mean is, does it grab the audience? Do they become immersed in it and involved in it? And does it take them through some sort of journey of feelings or memories or engagement with the world in some way or with themselves?
So the song is about them, not about you?
It's about both of us. I have never written a song which wasn't really about me. I didn't think it was when I wrote it. But I went that journey on the red velvet steering wheel cover because it started being, look at them with their silly dingle dangles and what's it. And then I realised that, this is me in 40 years' time or something.
The song that I reminded you about yesterday, which I always remember, which was the Mr. and Mrs. Ferengeti Smith. Now is that poking fun at somebody else? Is it making a social comment about these people who live these imaginary lives?
Yes, and that was also about me. I discovered later. That sort of obsession with houses, with a place where you live, and wanting to beautify it and titivate it and mess around with it, I don't know. And sort of the ambition of wanting to come up in the world somehow or other, to become famous or to become more noticed or to become more popular. We're all driven by these ambitions, and of course you notice it first in other people. Because that's where you can safely criticize it, okay? You say, it's him. But it's always that what you notice in others, you notice it because it's already in yourself.
So do you think I'm a liberal man is really not about somebody you've noticed, but actually about you saying, I hate them, I hate it?
Oh yeah. The liberal man came from a deep sort of realization, or my own intuition, that what the values and opinions, particularly opinions that people put out, they describe themselves. I'm this sort of man, this sort of person. I'm a caring person. I'm this, that, and the other. I believe in this, and I'm anti this, and I'm pro. They cover themselves in labels, which announce to you what sort of person they are. Bullshit. They are. You take the labels off, and underneath, you will find the exact opposite. That's why they need the labels to balance, to stop themselves from their deeper feelings being let loose. They've got all these savage beasts inside us, which are full of sort of fear and hit him first before he hits you, that sort of stuff, and racist feelings that we all have as well, because we're all programmed by nature to be suspicious of that which is different. Like any animal,
when you talk about those songs, they're all about nice domestic things, which could possibly be about us as well. But the South African experience was actually dangerous, wasn't it? Because, Ach Please Daddy, I didn't realize, had outsold Elvis as records in South Africa. Yeah. And what was so dangerous about that? It's a song about a little boy wanting to go out and have a good time. What's so dangerous about that in South Africa?
It was, you see, apartheid was not just the separation of black from white. Everybody thinks that. They think it was, on the obvious political level, it was separating black from white. But for the people who had conceived apartheid, it was a political philosophy, which was also a life's philosophy. They wanted to separate everything. They wanted to separate the languages, of which there are several in South Africa, of course. And it wasn't just white from black. They wanted to separate the English from the Afrikaners. Those two languages should not mix, the two European languages of Africa. Well, too late, because the pupils that I was teaching, they were already happily mixing the language. And if you went down the mines, the gold mines. The workforce down there spoke a language which they called Fanagalo, which you probably know about, which was fundamentally Zulu mixed with Afrikaans and English. It was a whole wonderful sort of mengelmoes, is the Afrikaans word, a mengelmoes from Tala. And so South Africa was already on the road to integrating its languages, and for 300 years, for heaven's sake, they'd been miscegenating as well. This apartheid business, they had to sort of prise them apart with crowbars, you know, because the country was miscegenating, and that's that. There were 3 million people of coloured descent, mixed descent, to prove it, you know. So apartheid was a crazy idea come too late, but it was a purist idea. This concept of purity, they wanted English to be pure English, Afrikaans to be pure Afrikaans.
So you're telling me that they actually objected to the fact that you'd written a song which was half Afrikaans and half English?
Yeah. They said that I went to see a gentleman at the SABC.
The South African Broadcasting?
Yes,
yeah.
South African Broadcasting Corporation. And every song I'd written at that stage, he had a separate reason for banning. And Achbridge then said there, he said, you are destroying the purity of the languages. And I remember saying to him, I said, but are you saying that English is a pure language? You know, he looked at me really bitter.
But didn't you point out that it's essentially a children's song, isn't it? I mean,
yes, oh yeah.
The chorus is what? A list of things the kid wants when he goes to the movies.
It's a children's song. It's, you know, that's why I wrote it. I had Woody Guthrie in the back of my mind when I wrote that song, because Woody, I was intrigued by the fact that when someone like Woody spoke, he didn't change his accent in order to sing. It remained the same. It was the same pronunciation in singing and in speaking. Whereas in South Africa, they'd all talk like this. As soon as they started to sing, they would sing like Perry Como. It had to come out in American. But it was much the same in England. It was certain kind of music you couldn't sing.
Yeah.
You couldn't sing jazz stuff or swing or dance music with anything but an American accent.
But talk about in the chorus of that song. Could you just list the things that the kid wants? Is there any reason why you chose those particular things?
No, I just looked around at what was available and what I could fit into
it's
the
something
rhyming
like bubblegum.
Popcorn, chewing gum, peanuts and bubblegum. Ice cream, candy floss, Eskimo pie.
What are the other songs that they objected to, and why?
Oh God, all of them. The Lift Girls Lament, they said, was insulting to a section of the population.
It's a very funny song.
Confession, they said, was corrupting the morals of the youth. So it went on.
Were there any threats to you?
There were gentlemen who suddenly appear at the back of the room, and you took one look at them, you know, and you knew they were special branch guys with thin moustaches, raincoats, you know. They were cartoon characters, they really were. They took notes, but they never actually threatened me. The only guy who threatened me was after I'd done a cabaret down in Durban one night, and this huge fella. And everybody had left and the evening was over, and I was just packing up to leave, and he came across to me and says, "Aren't you letting the side down a bit?" I went out through the kitchens at the back. I never came back.
When I first met you, we were in England, right? And you were part of the folk scene there. That was an amazingly fruitful time. Because, I mean, when we were listing all the people we knew, I mean, when you think, if you put them all together in one room, it would have been an absolutely dynamic group of people, wouldn't it?
It was a wonderful period, and I'm only too glad that I was there to take part in that. In the folk song movement at that time, there were such wonderful artists around, tremendous support and enthusiasm and excitement in the clubs. I mean, we get clubs, you get 200 people a night in some of those clubs. Today, you're lucky if you get 40, 50. But then, some of the clubs were big and bursting, and it was the place to go for young people. And there was a lot of excitement in it.
But for you, it would have been difficult among a group of people like yourself, because you weren't an American fake blues singer. you weren't an English fake traditional singer. You were actually doing something, and I guess that it came from Tom Lehrer, that kind of comedy song with a social background or with a political intent, right? And how was that accepted in a folk club where people came along to sing folk music?
Tell you why, because this used to preoccupy me as well. The fact that I was not working class. Because the folk club movement was essentially, liked to think of itself as a working class movement. You know, the people. I mean, someone like Martin Carthy does not come from a working class background, but he's, you know, there was this feeling we all have to be, there's solidarity of working class. And me, I'd been to Oxford University. I didn't speak like a working class lad, you know. The reason they accepted me was as a colonial. I'd come from South Africa.
That's interesting.
And there's always been a slight resistance to me from the die-hard traditionalists in the folk movement. They've always been suspicious of me, and that's one of the reasons why I've left Britain in 1990, whenever it was. I left Britain about 5 years ago. I just said that. I left because the festivals won't book me. Very few of them, and today, unfortunately, all the heat and the energy from the folk movement has been drained off into the festivals. The clubs have withered a great deal, and there just isn't much, you know, money available in the clubs anymore. And the club organisers, the festivals that I have appeared at, I always had a wonderful time, went down very well, much to the chagrin of the organiser.
I started looking for the way in which I'd like things to go, and I liked Noel Coward, and I liked funny songs.
Yeah.
You were one of the people that we used to come and watch, and we used to do your act basically because it was funny, and it was a direct relationship with the audience. It didn't go through culturally or politically acceptable routes, and actually it isolated us. I mean, I can remember going into a folk club with a guitar and being told, leave that outside. We don't want that stuff in here. This is a pure thing. And where did you get this song from? And which year was it collected? And did someone write this? And all that kind of wit was not allowed in the clubs. And it's people like you who did it. Whereas you were funny and you had the funny songs, you stayed with the funny songs. The other funny people dropped the songs and became stand-up comics. But Billy Connolly, Jasper Carrott, you know, these people, they moved away from the music into comedy, which they made a fortune at. You know?
Yeah, because that's where the money was, really.
So really, what is it right that what you had and people like us, me and my little group, inherited was more theatrical than folk?
My original inspiration was musical. And I didn't grow up with folk songs. I didn't have a grandmother who sat me on her knee and sang me, you know, to be washerwomen down the old. I didn't get any of that, nothing. I never knew that English folk song existed until I came back to England from South Africa in 1963 with Wait a Minute. It was only when I started singing in the folk clubs. I had an invitation to the first club up to Potter's Bar. Maddie Pryor was singing there that night, remember. Then, as I discovered the folk clubs and they started inviting me to go and sing there, I discovered English folk music. But before then I never really knew of it. I only knew American folk music, French
chanson. So Brassens and Jacques Brel are important to your background.
Terribly important to my songwriting background.
And it's interesting. How do you relate to Jake Thackeray?
Oh, well, Jake, of course, is 100% Brassens, without Brel or anybody else, or anybody else at all. Jake was 100% in love with Brassens, and he did a wonderful job. Because Jake, in trying to do an English form of what Brassens did in French, surpassed himself, and he wrote some stunning songs.
Fantastic songs.
And it's just a terrible loss.
Yeah. I've not heard a proper, what I would call a decent translation of Brel in English.
No,
when you look at the French and you realise what a bitter, not angry, but how ironic and how dark it is. And then you see the English translation, and you think, Seasons in the Sun. This is schmaltz. This is Hallmark. Yeah, compared to what it was before. And I guess when you're trying to, I mean, the thing about Red Velvet Steering Wheel Cover Driver is actually, for me, velvet. And you have to try and get that in French, and you're not going to work it, because it's not just the words, it's the tune and the words.
And all the images which are conjured up by the words are English images, really. I don't know how to get that image in French, because a French word does not trigger the same associations as its equivalent.
And that's why we haven't got a proper translation of Brill.
You can't have one.
How much of you as a writer and how much of you as a performer? Because I've just watched the I'm a Liberal Man, and I cannot imagine not acting that song. You can't simply sing it, you have to act it.
I know, I think I only write really in order to perform. If you take the performance possibility away from me, I'm not sure that I would write at all. I want to have that thing in my mouth. I want to be able to spit it out, and I want to be able to say it, and I want to sing it, and I want to express it, and it is an act. I mean, I think a large percentage of my songs are like mini dramas.
You don't say, hey, this is a great song for Elvis to sing. You'd go, I want to do it. And if somebody else would like it, then good luck.
Fine, I'll be only too glad. But
yeah.
my songs are so kind of a bit off the wall, a bit different, that I think most people don't think of doing them. They think it's sort of, that territory is full of mines.
And one of my inspirations was Diz Disley. Not because of his Django guitar playing, although that was that, but also because of the way in which he presented his act. He was funny. But you say that there was, and as only when you said it that I've been thinking about it a lot, that there is a distance between him and the audience, because what he was on stage was not true.
He had a stage persona, and the comic act he did was an act. It's in my book, you know. Yes, it was funny because it was in tune with the recognisable characteristics of English life, musical in particular. And he would make his fun, his humour would make reference to reference points which the English could tune into. But it wasn't anything to do with Diz the man. We never knew he was a private person. I never knew. I kept wanting to say, well, the real Diz Disley, please stand up, because you don't know him. And ultimately, what an audience wants is you. They want honesty. They want your real feelings.
Are you as creative and as productive as you were?
No. The last song I wrote was about 3 years ago. And I hope this doesn't mean I've just finished writing.
Do you fret about that?
Yes. Oh, fret? Yes, I do. I worry about it.
Do you still enjoy doing this touring? Because it's grueling, isn't it?
Yeah, I find the displacement and the air travel and everything.
Because you've been doing it 30, 40 years now?
Well, it's now, when did I start? 1961, so it's nearly 50 years. But I haven't been touring all the time, but the real touring time was the folk scene in Britain. Then I was away, one night stands, one after the other, all over. But I was young enough to cope with that. But even then, you come up against this wall of loneliness. You reach a new town where you don't belong until you've sung there. And when you sing there, you make contact, and then you create your bonds with that town and with those people. The audience is terribly important. I can't sing without an audience.
Right.
You should hear me sometimes singing without an audience. I'm terrible. Even with an audience I don't sing well half the time, but it doesn't matter, because you've got they're doing it for me. So the fact that I'd never really fancied myself as much of a singer.
But the intonation of your voice and the way you look at people and the way in which you...
Well, I'm an actor of singing, I guess.
That's right.
I would love to have been a singer. I mean,
So it's the package, isn't it?
It's the package.
Yeah.
I admire real singers, you know. I love real voices. Sinatra, for instance, it's a bit corny for me to say this, but I mean, I listened to Sinatra with utter amazement at the sheer beauty and control, and his voice was like silk, and he could also, you know, do things with it, dominate a whole orchestra, ride an orchestra. He was an astonishing singer. Presley was a lovely singer. Presley had a beautiful voice when he wanted to use it that way. As he got older and more desperate, it tended to go all rough and wrong, but he fundamentally had a rather lovely voice. Those are the big fish, you know. They're the whales. They carry a lot of weight. People like me are the minnows.
You don't know what you're doing when you throw your pebble into the pond, do you? You don't know where the ripples are.
This is true. That's true, and one must not try to evaluate oneself according to the worldly success you've had, especially in financial terms or in popularity terms. You've got to go on doing what you do, being what you are. And if it catches on, or if you're lucky enough to have some people who want to hear you and share that experience that is you, then that's what you are, that's what you must value.